Hey, this is Alex Head, founder of Subtext Radio.
This is Subtext.
Please go ahead and click the like button and the subscribe button. It really helps us to reach new audiences and promote the artists that we work with. Hit like and hit subscribe.
Repression in civilized countries is no longer a negation, an aggression. It's an ambiance. It is pacified everydayness wherein the distinction between play and the police is effaced.
Hello. Subtext Adata AiR series presents Adata After the Wall with Gabriel Birch. This week, Subtext has been exploring the Adata with visual artist Gabriel Birch. Gabriel's stay has added multiple new layers to my understanding of the Adata, and not only conceptually. You can hear it. Something at the base of the island has ruptured, leaking a sinister foreshadowing of shopping malls and concrete car parks. How many new layers will it take to forge an institution out of the Adata? Is it already too late?
Does it change now that there are more artists, this idea of claiming the space?
For me, yeah. Which is also why I think I start to scale down the kind of camping side of the studio a bit.
What's the camping side of the
Well, like
tent,
the tent and just the kind of loose way in which everything was left. I feel like actually it could just be pared down to like shelter and a table.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Rather than like our box of shorts on the tree.
Yeah.
And like
you don't want to leave it like looking like you're back in a minute, but instead just that there's the possibility of an habitation.
Yeah, there's the question of whether or not it's the same question in a way, Gabs. Like when we all leave finally in a month, do I do what I did last time and just collapse and just leave the table?
Well, my feeling about the sculptures in a way, they're like the table.
Yeah.
And I think they're kind of like a question to leave something to maybe people will consider more their impact by discovering them, and hopefully people won't think of them necessarily as an object that's been made for the island.
Why? What should they think of them as?
Well, maybe more again as like similar to the crushed bottles. Like the detritus of people having visitors.
It's like you're kind of skating this line between the critique of affect and the sort of manipulative aspects of public furniture or public display. But then, as artists, we're often sort of very sensitive to the way that the world works, or the way the city works, and so we're also, in a sense, like you talk about second skin, and adding, in a sense, and kind of like producing another layer on top of this kind of complex collection of sensations. And yeah, I wonder like how you navigate like that territory between the critique of affect and the production of affect.
Under the illusory liberty of the private domain, all the contradictions of the economy and of politics come to strain the routine and to alter the course of life. Those who live parked in public houses or in the promiscuity of the assembly line can only dream, under the same sign of liberty, of overcrowded beaches and a sea of cars. The disconnection between paradise and hell is that people can only dream of a paradise in the image of their hell.
1950. A street in lamplight. Beyond a wall of ripped-up city, the Nazis were shooting. Past the barricade and a line of tailors' mannequins assembled in a crude and motionless can-can, Thibault could see the khaki of scattering Wehrmacht men. Grey dress uniforms, SS black, the blue of the Kriegsmarine, all lit up by the flare of weapons. Something sped along the Rue de Paradis, weaving in a howl of rubber between bodies and ruins, coming straight at the Germans. 2 women on a tandem? They came very fast on big wheels. The soldiers shot, reloaded and ran. Because the rushing vehicle did not turn or fall under their onslaught, there was a whir of chains. Only one woman rode, Thibault made out. The other was a torso, jutted from the bicycle itself, its moving prow, a figurehead where handlebars should be. She was extruded from the metal. She pushed her arms backward, and they curled at the ends like coral. She stretched her neck and widened her eyes. Thibault swallowed and tried to speak, and tried again and screamed, "It's the Velo!" At once his comrades came. They pressed against the big window and stared down into the city gloom. The armature of velocipedes, lurching through Paris on her thick-spoked wheels, singing a song without words. My God, Thibault thought. Because the woman was riding her, and that absolutely should not happen. But there she was, gripping the Velo's wrist with one hand, pulling with the other on leather strapped tight around the cycle centaur's throat. The Velo moved faster than any car or horse, any devil Thibault had yet seen, swaying between the facades, dodging bullets. She tore through the last of the men and the lines of figurines they'd arranged. She raised her front wheel and hit the barricade, mounting the meters of plaster stone, bone wood and mortar that blocked the street. She rose. She hurled into the air above the soldiers, arced up, seeming to pause, falling at last through the invisible boundary between the 9th and 10th arrondissements. She landed hard on the surrealist side of the street. The Velo bounced and twisted on her tires, slid sideways. She came to a stop, looking up at the window of the Man à Plume's hideout, straight into Thibault's eyes. He was the first out of the room and down the splintering steps, almost falling from the doorway out into the darkening street. His heart shook him. The passenger was sprawled on the cobbles where her mount had bucked. The Velo reared above her on her hind wheels like a fighting horse. She swayed. She looked at Thibault with pupilless eyes, the same colour as her skin. The manner flexed her arms and reached up to snap the cord around her neck and let it fall. She rocked in the wind. Thibault's rifle dangled in his hands. At the edge of his vision he saw Elise lob a grenade over the barricade, in case the Germans were regrouping. The explosion made the ground and the barrier tremble, but Thibault did not move. The Velo tipped forward, back onto both wheels. She accelerated toward him, but he made himself stay still. She bore down and her wheels were a blur. Adrenaline took him with the certainty of impact, until, on a final instant too quick to see, she tilted and passed instead, so close to him that Thibault's clothes were tugged in the rush of her air. Tires singing, the cycle presence wove between the shattered buildings of the Cité de Service into ruins and shadows, out of sight. Floppy infrastructure. The rain had washed away our chances of a direct flight to Sofia. Encased in a new fuselage, Gabriel and I began a week of strange sleeping patterns, while all around us the architecture of flight pressed in. London, Berlin, Cologne, Sofia, Plovdiv, Adata, sleep. He has brought an object of his own creation, and seems intent on releasing it into the island's wilds. A casing of aluminium in wave form, an echo perhaps of our cancelled flight. Piped music reminds me of how isolated artists can become in Berlin. Yet here is an artist inherently bound to cities via the evocation of architectural discourse. We doubled down on time and scored a new cachet. The microphone deployed as a magic wand, at first to ward off spider webs, later as an inverted timepiece. For the longer the sample, the less the work, or so we began to believe.
So we're descending the concrete staircase from the motorway down onto the island. The rains have stopped. To propose a fictional notion of what Adata could be, we will be surveying the island We're below the motorway now. The dappled light is falling through the woodland, brushing past wet leaves, following a track deep into the woodland. Cast material in the city somehow has contained within it the remnants of the previous city. Yellow leaves crumpled on the ground. Trees are quite robust here. Some of them are tipping, presumably because of unstable ground underfoot. The sounds are changing now. The city talks back, so the city is independent from any design or any planning that has been made for it. The city kind of has an agency that is separate from human subjectivity, perhaps. Ivy climbing some of the trees, moss on others. Concrete forms. A plastic bottle, clear. A brown plastic bottle. Another bottle. The ground is soft and moist. Plastic tied in the trees. Grass hanging over the lower parts of branches. And light falling on the wet leaves below. Going uphill now. I can feel branches under the earth. Maybe they're roots. The exhibition is somehow an event. It's cool in the forest today. 3 tree stumps. People have been cutting wood here. There's another plastic marker tied to a tree. An island that is dependent on the city of Plovdiv. Layers of fungus are growing from a large pine. We turned left from the motorway. I can see a petrol station broken through the trees on the edge of the riverbank. We're walking through an area with no path. Of my research, I'm inspired a lot by architecture, but specifically informal architecture, or as I like to call it, like the informal institution. 3 cut trees lie together. Various broken branches grow from the ground. A brown bottle half buried. A clear bottle. And gradually people started to inhabit the building. The tree is arched horizontal, about head height, covered in moss. It's still growing. The main trunk is horizontal with branches growing upwards towards the light. The water now. In front of the water is a wall. It's made from concrete sections, about 60 centimetres by 60 centimetres. Maybe some of the research that I'd like to take place on Adata, which would be to survey Adata, get some sense of like Plovdiv and what the social scenario is in Plovdiv. It defines the perimeter of the island. But below is the riverbank. I can see another concrete wall on the other side of the river. And beyond that wall, I can see Plovdiv. There are broken fragments of concrete here. Seed pods. Red. The concrete looks blue in comparison. Covered in green leaves. Surrounded by branches bending over it. So a lot of what Pavilion is about in the early days is doing curatorial projects, but that aim to antagonise the institution. If you step into a mainstream institution, you aim to challenge it. There are some plastic formers for making plaster stucco on the floor. The snails love living under these. We're in a clearing now. But a lot of the work I make, a lot of the objects are kind of interested in the sculpture as a prop. It's layers of grass, rotting berries, snail shells, mud, blackened chunks of fungus. There are footprints here. Propose Adata as a kind of architectural space. A small dome woven from grass and creepers. A limb of rotting wood, pocked with holes. There's less ivy on the trees here. There's something buried over there. Half buried. Sodden. brighter in this section. Green plants are growing up above the head. They're lush and verdant and young.
This is subtext.
How do you come up with the shape?
So basically there are a few things. One, that I wanted to make some kind of monument to bring to the island, and I had a form in mind that looked something like a open book. But also I wanted to sort of make a sort of model maybe for an extension to the island. Something that was water dynamic. Yeah, that would maybe allow the water to flow over it at times when the river became higher. I like the idea of them as kind of fragments that people might come across. So like the way you might come across, you know, like earlier we tripped over water bottles, but you might often come across kind of wreckage that describes an event. So if you go trekking in the wilderness, you'll sometimes find a car wreck from nowhere, or you'll find maybe like things that look like aircraft fragments.
(1941). Jack Parsons was drunk. The Surrealists were playing a game. He watched them sourly. Varro drew a snake coiled on a wheeled chart. She scribbled it in seconds. From where he was sat, Jack alone can see what she was drawing. Allons-y, she said. She held it up and turned it around for 1 second to show it to Lamba, who drew her own quick version, which she showed to Lamb, who showed his own rendition to Yves Tanguy, and so on. The glimpses were diminishing echoes, evolving from corkscrew serpent on its chariot to a spiral on a square. The frivolity disgusted him, but though Parsons could not say why, watching excited him. His hosts played games of whispering, hearing and mishearing each other's words. They played games of attention and chance. They played games of absurdity and misunderstanding. Fry watched with affectionate interest, Miriam with fascination. Mary Jane smoked in the doorway, her arm around Raymond. He radiated disdain. The games produced strange figures and sentences that made no sense but that two made Parsons' breath come quick. Do what thou wilt. The surrealist drew and hid what they drew, folded paper to obscure it. They passed their papers around and added to each other's unseen images. Watching, Parsons breathed out in time to a gust of wind that rattled a forgotten painting in a tree's canopy outside. Oh, he thought with a rush, as they passed their papers again. Each drew a head and hid it and passed it. Each drew a body and passed it again. Each drew legs or a base. Oh, I get it. He rocked in his chair. He understood the link between his Kolkorn, the occultist, the hermeticist, tapper into the world's backways, and the Kolkorn close to this austere, courteous Breton. The connection of the golden dawn and animals, and Pleromic beyond the woman committed to the liberation of dreams. From an overlap in the middle of the Venn diagram, Kolkorn watched him. Maybe, he thought, in the suburbs of this oppressed town, this edge of an edge, maybe at this moment in a room full of the stateless, in a nation from which they wanted out, maybe here, while they played foolish games to thumb their noses at perpetrators of mass murder, maybe an engine that he built to do the math, to make a clay man walk, to make words and numbers intervene as presences, might tap into something else. Something that might trouble the Nazis. I know a game, he said. No one looked at him. He ran upstairs, returned with all his mechanisms. The surrealists were on another round. Parsons watched them draw while he connected cords to batteries and muttered powerful words. "What are you making?" Fry said, looking at the mess of mechanics. "Is it art?" He looked triumphantly at Miriam. The surrealists kept passing their papers. "Right," said Jack. "It's an art thing." He turned switches, he checked gauges, he placed crystals, vacuum tubes, bits of paper at strategic places in the room. "Wait, just 1 second, just a moment, before you all unfold." The surrealist looked up in mild surprise. They did as he asked. Jack held his breath and nodded, and wired up the wood and metal box at the center and turned a final switch. Static came rushing through them all. Breton frowned. Lambert laughed. Varro showed her teeth. Everyone looked at Jack Parsons. And he gasped as they opened their papers, because he had already understood what their game was, how it worked, what it would unveil. The artists flattened out what they held, and what they had drawn, in plainless collaboration, were impossible things. Figures neither evolved nor designed, coagula of fleeting and distinct ideas and chance. Parsons' battery clicked. The room began to fill with something unseen. These weren't demons they'd drawn, not the goats and beasts of hell. They were objective chance, chimera's for this era. Jack saw a figure with the head of a singing bird, its body a clock with the pendulum swinging, its legs a mass of fishtails deftly done in pen and ink, a sketched-out bare face of a coffin, walking on clown's feet, a moustached man, rendered as if by a child, his body a buxom leopard's, rooted like a plant. Exquisite corpses, tasting new wine. The artist laughed. The needles on the gauges swung as Parsons' battery filled. He could feel energies coiling out of these heads, these drawings, this room, into his wires. It wasn't just drink making people giddy now, not just the exquisite corpses they drew, nor any other game. It was the sense of something ending, a shutter closing, a noose, yes, tightening.
Yeah, this one kind of looks like an infrastructure cover to me.
Yeah.
You know, when it's sitting on the ground like this, like you could open it up and then find a whole like world of technology inside of it.
Yeah, so I wanted to at least think about that potential. Because something that's become clear is this like this idea of the island being occupied potentially, or the island being developed potentially. Mm-hmm. Whether that's as like an artistic studio or a cultural space. But I just think it's, I only think the idea of settling somewhere or making a refuge somewhere is more complex than just being positive or negative. I even think that dichotomy is maybe too simplistic. But I think what's brilliant is that it's a space to think about these things. It's like I could step onto the island at any point.
Without realizing what kind of hell you would get into if you came here, right?
Yes, the wrong place at the wrong time. Could be complicated.
How unbearable it can be if you're not, like the things that you're unfamiliar with, like stepping in the compost of the forest, or dealing with the mosquitoes or the heat.
Or running out of water.
Running out of water, not knowing how to get back. You know, there's a lot of fear associated with the unknown if you actually get over to it.
Yeah, and the island's a lot bigger than I imagined it to be. Much bigger. I kind of imagined that you'd be able to feel its, like, understand its perimeters all the time, and it's definitely not the case. It's actually more like you're in a space, like a wooded space.
Do you feel like the island has as much to do with the water as you had imagined before because of that? Like with these sculptures?
Yes, but mainly because of the wall, actually, in a weird way. Where we are now, because there's a notion at night. Well, I kind of feel an idea that it's like a flood defense or something to preserve a core part of the space. And I've also heard that, you know, it was something that was constructed to maintain the motorway. So it's like a defense to maintain the foundations of the motorway above it.
Should we put the tent here?
Yeah.
Where the bags are?
So where's the pegs, dude? We just need 4.
Wait, if we turn it so the entrance is over here.
Where's the entrance?
Some people's parents have memories of being here as a kid, as any part. But not a lot of cameras around, I guess, or whatever. There's not a lot of evidence on that. There's a lot of material evidence you can find.
And then trails weren't maintained, if there were trails. So.
Yeah. So it's kind of oral history, and then it's quite fragile history in that way.
But, yeah. But there are signs that people are using it, like you can see the trees are being chopped. But it's not like there's loads of mushrooms growing, so people would come seasonally to collect mushrooms, or that's not what I've noticed.
Yeah, so in a way we're sort of continuing that oral history, but just in a much more like technological way.
Yeah, and acknowledging maybe that the area inside this perimeter, you know, you're discussing it as like, an area that's been kind of marketed as somewhere to visit. We're kind of acknowledging that that's like semi-constructed or semi-planned.
Not quite this virgin space.
Yeah.
Like it has two sides to it, right? That it's only possible to have this island here because there is a wall that was put in place at some point.
Yeah.
And yet the wall wouldn't be here without the island either.
The symbolic schema of inhabiting is that of provision and investment. Vacation sun is repressive. Its real function is to disavow the value of pleasure, because it intervenes as a sign of absent totality. We're at a dead end. Keep you moving, keep you active, keep you shopping. The brambles are growing here. The trees have spines. The grass is brown and dead, layered, tendrils crisscrossing underfoot. Some alive, some parched. An elbow in the ground. I can feel the roots underfoot. A lot of my work is that thing that I have a sort of conceptual starting point, but then in the studio I try and take risks with that practice and develop the critical position based on that experimentation. And monuments to the kind of luxury of that everyday throwaway thing that you get. The floor is moist underfoot again. Crisscrossing of dead branches. Crisscrossing of fallen branches. Now a carpet of ivy. Proposal for a sculpture, or proposal for a landscape, or maybe a proposal for a figure. Questioning commercial control of the urban environment. A branch, approximately 6 meters long and about 15 centimeters in diameter, hangs from a tree that was its neighbor. It wobbles, leafless, haphazard jagged branches cutting against the blue. There are more dead trees here. Tree stumps eroded into pyramids. This tree stump looks like it's made of clay. The bark is rough and blobbed and it reaches a metre high. A rotting monument, hollowed, powdery inside. Reaching high above the canopy. The sun is dimming here. The idea of this work was to take things that people saw every day around them. Is there a shelter? No, it's just an undulation of the land, maybe a riverbank. Cut out all of the content from the advertisement. The branches are thinner here, they're arching. A bivouac made with branches and tumbled grass. Saplings compete, but the woodland is still loose. Make people sit, but only for a short time, and then nudge them to move them on. Branches balanced to make a teepee frame, but they're only about 1.5 meters high, and there's no shelter. Older trees travel straight up. Younger trees are angled, they criss and cross, leaning on the older trees. The city is next door. The forest is thinning again. A dead tree leans on its stump. Fallen branches create a frame. The trees are entangled here, leaning on one another, pushing each other over. Architectural models or references to landscape. Landscape of that deceit. The ground is drier here, and the forest is opening up. A white butterfly fluttering around purple flowers. I can see the concrete perimeter of the island again. There's no trees around this section. It's the perimeter of a meadow. This concrete is redder. I can feel the rain droplets falling from the trees as I pass through them. Dragonflies, coupling and uncoupling, head to tail. There are pods in the trees here. Flat and long. And I was interested in the fact that it's made in this kind of beautiful, sort of dreamy form, which is in a way to sort of occlude its aggressive intention. The meadow is totally different. And the concrete perimeter splits one half of the island from the other half. Beetles are crawling all over it here. Ants, flies. The island below is darker. It's lush with young trees. Where I first got interested in Baudrilard, because the way he talks about that arrondissement of Paris as being like the hotbed of the first French Revolution, and then also the hotbed of the sort of revolt or revolution of '68 as well. And his opinion is, well, a basic précis of his opinion is that that's what art is for, is it's a spectacularization of culture that is used to quash revolutionary action, real revolutionary action.
I think that most of the time in my education people talk about art as sort of part of revolution, with the surrealists and the situationists sort of bringing on like new forms.
Definitely. But I think it's an interesting question from Baudrilard. Like, why these institutions constructed, and I think he's not critiquing necessarily artistic production or artistic practice. He's critiquing the formation of an institution, which I think is a big issue, like sort of like the control or the preaching of a right, or what is valuable cultural production. Creating a hierarchy of value in cultural production.
Like deciding what to show to the populace as valuable artwork. It was also interesting to go into the museums in Norway because they have so much money recently. They really do go around and just like have the masters, even though it's such a small country. They have Rembrandt and Picasso and all of the people that I guess you think that you should see if you were in Paris, in the Louvre or in the Louvre, Musée d'Orsay or something like this, where you think, what does Western art look like?
A room full of darkness and light, glare and black, heat and soot, and Thibaut can hear his own blood and the drumming of wood. His face streams with heat. His eyes itch. The tables are dancing on their stiff legs. They somersault endlessly at the point of an explosion. They are bodies. Skeletons and dead flesh dancing. Two in the same blast, meat ripped from bones, and returning to them. The exquisite corpse steps like a dainty child through a carnage of burning waiters, and Thibaut follows, fighting for breath on his mission again. The kitchen is full of a storm of burst plates. At its center is someone long dead. He is a ruin. A tough, wiry young man, whose glimpsed face snarls and burns up, and whose bones burst from him in twitching repetition, his grimace dead pugnancy, then dead pain, then the rictus of just death, again and again, too fast to follow. He moves like a blown-up rag doll as fire and devilry and shrapnel flay him in a cloud of shards. His hand is on a metal box. It blossoms extruding wires, paper, light. It, too, bursts forever. Out of it comes, had come, would come the blast. The exquisite corpse trembles, this close to the point, a dream straining against what made it into flesh, reaching, with limbs like industry, for the bomb. As it takes the exploded box from the hand of the dead exploder, Thibaut hears Sam scream his name. Going out is much faster. The Manif and Thibaut half run, half fly. Sam is waiting as close as she can come. She shouts in delight to see them re-emerge. As they approach her, she shouts again, eager and loud, at the sight of what the exquisite corpse carries. But the bomb is strewing parts as it comes, and nothing is happening. The box is collapsing, and the explosion does not. Behind them, the room continues to blow endlessly apart. Thibaut and the Manif run into the last of the light, and Sam stands in the road with her camera out, and Thibaut realizes there is a wall of smoke thorns around her, a defense from somewhere already withering, and at the edge of the junction Thibaut can see the Nazi soldiers gathering. Something is coming. The street trembles. There is a booming as if things are falling out of space. "Give it to me!" Sam bellows as they run. But the box is still dropping components and wires, and now the case is falling apart. Sam reaches toward the Manif she does not like to touch, grabs it from the exquisite corpse's hands. It scatters into nothing, and is gone. Sam screams a long scream of rage. Mortar streaks over them, and takes down buildings to block their way. Sam and Thibaut veer. The exquisite corpse does things to physics, and they blink with the twists, and ahead of them now is the river, and in it the Ile de la Cité, and they keep running east along the riverbank. on the Quai de Grand Augustins and across from where the Palais de Justice once was, and where there is now a channel of clear water that spells something from above, and where sawdust swirls in the windows and doors of Saint-Chapelle, a landscape of choking drifts, and Sastrugai at the island's edge. The exquisite corpse is ahead of them. It lurches left onto the Porte d'Audeboul, leads them over the bridge. It is as if Paris ushers them in to the island, to where Notre Dame looms. Since the S-blast, the squat towers on either side of its sunburst central window have been industrial silos, tall and fat, crudely hammered metal. One seeps bloody vinegar from imperfect seals. The air they enter is full of its sour stink, the ground below wet and fermented. Through the wires-strengthened windows of the other tank is a thick, pale swirl. It's said that it contains sperm. Thibault has often begged the sky to bomb it. He barely sees it now. The Manif takes them right through the tangled wasteland of the gardens behind the church, and there at the furthest tip of the islet on Pont de l'Avache, back over to the south side of the little bridge to neighbouring Ile Saint-Louis, are both gone. Nothing but rubble in the river. There is nowhere to go. They turn. The mud shudders. They've found us, Thibault says.
We leave the office, heading uphill away from the mosque. Cake collection bakers, Lusso men. Use it colours, use it. Talisker made by the sea, non-stop, non-stop. Coca-Cola, Coney, MCF. Green cup, Dolce Homestyle, Casa. For Disma, buy for China. FAO 123 I 456 K 789 0 122. Polero exclusive wear and a leader, not a follower. Sobrane London, Cafe Milan Neroni, Illy non-stop. Kamatiza 1881. Non-stop, Coca-Cola, The Feeling, Christois, Christois, Christois. Traditional Bulgarian souvenirs. Rulers of CCCP. Saborna, Plovdiv Boutique. Christina, Diamond Center, 45%, 40%. S Boutique Outlet FYA Leliana Art Point Alpha Recal Men's Collection Kigili Breed Moda Italy El Boutique Moda Italy Ross de Zero Rinascimento Babylon Imperial Mary Lee Bayer Crystal Clean, Lance, Masker, Danta, Travel with Pleasure, Inbox, Open Opera, 2018, Argentina, Mi amor vesco estranezzo, Ludmil Angelo, Carmen Bizet, Hair, wigs and shop, Impress, Rent a car, ERS, Couture, Shah, 61, Gallery DI, Intro, Gallery Intro, Gallery, 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 Antico Ristorante, Plovdiv Regional History Museum, Exposition of Book Publishing in Bulgaria, Tsar Ivanova, Ancient Theatre 50 meters, Plovdiv Victoria House, 18th century, Tsar Ivanov, Coca-Cola, sit for a coffee looking down on the amphitheatre, city of Plovdiv, falls below, HRG Danov House, S. Hinjan House, SL Bojanakiv Museum, Ethnographisches Museum, Museum des Weidenberg, APM, www.philippoussis.com, APM, Ilya Tonchev, Painting Exhibition, Art Gallery, and Museum, Philippopoulos, Ristorante Antico, designed by D-Max, Studio 0899107776, Guideshaw, Plovdiv 035988895435, Panasonic, Stock, Old Town, Ancient Theatre, FC Lokomot, PB 6TA, PB 6 82 CP, P6 382 CP, CD, Bundesrepublik Deutschland, Bundesrepublik Deutschland, Honor-Konsulent, Municipality of Plovdiv, European Capital of Culture 2, Historical Centre, Matisa River, Maitsa, Boulevard, Sea Pit, 300 meters, Old Town, Natural History Museum, 500 meters, 100 meters, Kapana, Exposition, the Unification of Bulgaria.
You've been listening to Adata After the Wall from Subtext on 199 Radio and Gabriel Birch. Nocturne 14 Nights, Athens 2017. Soundpiece from Second Skin at Caustic Coastal, in collaboration with Dean Brierley on piano. Construction of the Lost Monument, placed on Adata 2018. Gabriel Birch in conversation with Anna Kostreva. Readings from Utopia Deferred by Jean Baudrilard. Readings from The Last Days of New Paris from China Melville. Thank you for listening. Join us next week with Anna Kostreva.